emails, and we have, nothing's coming in for emails to each other.
Being that the hour of 5 o'clock has arrived, the Public Safety and Licensing Commission is now in session. First order of business, of course, is the approval of minutes for the February 24th, 24 meeting. Do I have a motion and a second? Have a motion and a second. Are there any discussions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Our next item on the agenda is item number 0161-24, subject communication sponsored by Alder Pete, myself, on behalf of the City Clerk's Office, submitting a new application for a massage establishment license, Laurel Massage Studio, DBA Laurel Massage Studio, which is located at 524 Monument Square. Lauren, I'm sorry, I'll butcher your name. You want to pronounce? Recupero. I would have been close. Owner, First District. Please come forward. Attorney Arn, would you please swear the applicant in when she's situated, of course?
You have a free hand. Please raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Yes.
Thank you for coming in, Mrs. Pupo. Can you please explain what you're doing here today with your license? What are your plans? We'd like to have a little bit more general information on what your objectives, your goals, of course, to have a successful business, which the city always welcomes. Please proceed.
Yeah, so I've been a massage therapist for about 10 years now, Laurel Massage Studio. I've been working on my own with that for about 5 years. So I've been working for myself, and recently I was able to kind of expand and upgrade, so I'm hoping to hire some massage therapists in the future, and that's why I'm here to require my business license or my massage establishment.
Okay, so you definitely have some experience in that being the operator.
Yes.
Are you sole proprietor or?
Yes, sole proprietor.
Okay. Are there any questions from the committee? Yes, sir.
Where are you doing this now?
I'm downtown here on Monument Square.
Oh, you're still there, because
Yeah.
it says for a new application.
Okay, yeah, I had one. I applied during COVID time, because I remember doing this over the phone, so I had one, but it had expired, and I failed to renew it, so I'm back here to get it.
Okay, and everything's on the up and up? Motion to approve.
I have a motion and a second.
Okay.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? No further discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Good luck. I just get to
Good luck.
prove that council next Tuesday, and I see you got massage therapists, you know, you can walk on your back and do
Yeah.
chairs.
Do I need any of the?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you and good luck.
It's in April, isn't it? It's not next Tuesday.
No, that's like 2.5, 3 weeks away. Okay, our next item is item number 0182-24. The sub-communication sponsored by Alder Pete on behalf of the Public Safety and Licensing Committee, requesting the appearance of David Lewis, agent for Duo Bar and Grill, LLC, which is located at 1102 Mound Avenue, pursuant to a formal expression of concern, and also requesting consideration of rescinding the formal expression of concern, 8th District. Will the applicant please come forward? Thank you, sir. Attorney Arn, would you please swear the applicant in?
Sure. Can you raise your right hand, please? You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Will do.
Thank you. Now, sir, you've been called in today because the committee has received notice of one or more concerning incidents at your establishment. As a result, the committee has issued a formal expression of concern against you under Section 6-27 of the ordinance to address issues related to the premises, including but not limited to the 2/3/2024 Racine Police Department incident. And this is what I'm reading next is generally for your information so that you understand the due process. If you are issued 2 formal expressions of concern within a 6-month period or 3 or more in a 1-year period, you will be referred to the city attorney's office for disciplinary proceedings. We will start with the police department's summary. After that, you will have an opportunity to address the committee. Remember, you are not required to discuss the specific incident unless you wish. But you do have to tell us how you intend to address the issues going forward. I will now refer to Sergeant Tillman. Can you please speak to the item?
The specific item in question was on February 3rd, where officers conducted a tavern check. During the time, there were 2 bartenders serving alcohol at the bar licenses. Following up on the police report, they told officers they did have them, however, they did not have them with them. So they were cited for that violation, both of them, Ms. McCray and Ms. Long. And then a follow-up to that, on February 26th, there was a report of a man with a gun. Officers showed up on scene. There were no findings for a gun. However, they did do another license premise check, and the bar's licenses had all their licenses in a binder, which were up to date, but they weren't on display, which is a violation, but they weren't cited for it. And the bartender, which I don't have the name of in this short summary, showed her license or her number, 2945, to serve alcohol. Again, did not have the physical license on hand, but had a receipt from the city, so I don't know what date that was issued. If that was something that was done in between those 2 dates, I don't know. And that's it for the licenses. In total, there's been 5 calls for service that meet the license premise requirement since the beginning of the year, or 6. That's what I have this morning.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lewis, I'm going to ask you to please explain, but before I do so, I want to point out that when Officer Tillman mentioned 6 incidents, it's calling because of a disturbance, doing what a citizen should do, is not counted against you. Just make sure you understand. Or in other words, we don't want you to feel that you're penalized by calling the police when you need to. Just want to clear that up.
If I may, one of those.
Yes, sir.
One of those was actually bar staff call.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lewis, would you care to make any comments explaining?
Yeah, everybody has their license. The 2 people listed and also another person, they all have their license. The binder is on location. They were disciplined for not having it today. I don't know why they didn't have it on them, but the license, they all do have their license. So.
Yes, sir.
I find it hard to hold it. Yes, you are ultimately responsible for this type of scenario.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, as a bartender, it falls on the bartender to have that in their pocket. I always had mine in my pocket. That bartender should be fined. They did get fined. If this was a continuous issue with your tavern, I could see holding you responsible. But me personally, I hold that bartender responsible. If they had their license and did not have it on them, I hold the bartender responsible more than anybody. As long as they have their license, he knows they have a license. Yeah, I have a hard time holding it against the tavern. Like I said, if it was something that happened on a regular basis, yes, then start holding on you. But a bartender needs to know they have to have their license on them. It's a pretty simple task.
Yes, sir.
Question for the city attorney or the city clerk. They said you said they had a number, that they didn't have a license, but they had a receipt?
He said he had
That's
a
what-
license.
Well, no, they said they didn't have a license on them, they had a receipt that they had a license, am I correct?
The second call for service, yes.
So is
The
that?
first one.
No, the second
No,
one.
the first one, when they were asked for the licenses, they did not have them on them. They said that they did have them, but they did not have them on their person. That's why they were cited, because they didn't have them on their person. Officers went back on the 26th, did another check for licenses, and the licenses were in the binder, as he stated. They were up to date for the establishment. They weren't on display, which is a violation. They weren't cited for that. The bartender showed the officer her license number 2945 to serve alcohol. She did not have the physical license on hand, but she had a receipt from the city showing.
So my question is, as long as they got that receipt, it's legal?
So the law requires every operator to carry their license and have it on their person. It also requires that the license for the bar, the Class B license, be on display in a conspicuous place. So all of those are violations.
Question, can I continue?
Please.
Question for you then, do you have the licenses on the wall now, like in little picture frames, or do you still have them in a binder?
They should be on the wall now, right? They're in the binder because they keep on falling off or something like that in this place, but we can.
You gotta put them in a picture on the wall. And my reason for calling, or I was one of the people that wanted you called in, because if they don't have licenses, if something bad happens, it's gonna not turn out real good for you guys.
Yeah, I know that, they have license though, that's not the, I mean,
Right.
as far as getting them posted, that can be
Yeah.
done, but
But the one, I mean, if you wanna keep the ones in a binder, correct me if I'm wrong, the ones in the binder, if they wanna put their licenses in there so they can show the police, is that okay? Their personal license, so, 'cause it's on premise, and they can show we have it here. So they gotta have it in their pocket.
The language in the state law states they have to have it on their person, but obviously if the police officer arrives and the person goes to get their folder, I don't think that anyone would be cited or consider that a violation.
Yes.
So again, so for example, and granted, my business is in Caledonia, so for example, my bartenders keep their licenses in their drawer, so they're directly there. From what I understand, granted, it's different than Caledonia and Racine, but from what I have understood, that'd be fine. But I wanna go back to the first incident. So they did not, those bartenders said they had the licenses, but they weren't on them, or do we know if they had their licenses at all, but just didn't have them on them?
Going by what the report says, it just says that they advised officers that they had them. And they did not have the proof of the bartender's license, so that's what they ended up being cited for.
Okay. But they do, in fact, it is dated that their licenses are prior to that date.
Yeah, they both had them, got them on in 2023, so they go to, June 30th, 2025.
Okay. I just wanted to make that clarification. The second instance wasn't confused.
Okay.
I-
Please.
Thank you.
I think this is maybe just like a good reminder. It sounds like you have some good housekeeping in a sense that you created this binder to hold important documentation, which is fantastic. Great reminder, we sit here and we have to, try to do our best upholding the state laws that we have to oversee in public safety and licensing. And one of them, it can be as simple as the posting of the licenses. It can sound so ridiculous, but it is an obligation we have, and so when that comes up, it's like, now we have to communicate that somehow, some way to you. So, in being that, you have a couple servers who didn't have it, so, have that in their wallet. I constantly am changing things in and out of my wallet too, but it sounds like since you do, that was a great suggestion by one of the alders. You already have a binder that houses important documentation. Maybe that would be a great business practice. We're not here, we're not supposed to be really coming up with ideas, there's an opportunity to talk and maybe suggest some things. But, you know, if you can get that thing posted, just in case if there is another call, even if you call us, you know, it's unfortunate. Maybe that 1 out of the 6 calls was one that one of your staff ended up calling, but the officers have an obligation to check the things that were required by state to be in place when they walk into an establishment. So, you know, if we can get that thing posted up on the wall before, you know, days end, that'd be fantastic.
And like I said, you know, my girl part, they don't have pockets, so they don't keep, you know, they don't keep their wallet on their person, so that's why they like make sure to put it in the drawer every night so it's easily accessible, because, you know, with uniforms and things like that, but obviously that display, gotta tape it up, laminate it, put some packing tape on it, we do it all the time, but I don't really see any issues here.
Are there any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, you guys are kinda coming up on the police reports again, and before.
So, well, I'm confused about that. What happened with cause they call about anything. So like they called me the other day saying it was an accident 4 blocks away. Did the person possibly left the bar? So,
Well, these are kinda
so I'm,
pertaining to, so this one was from March 2nd. They received a call at 2:26 and arrived at 2:30. Duo's Bar and Grill, 1102 Mound Avenue, stabbing. A party arrived at Ascension Healthcare with a stab wound to their arm. Upon officers' arrival, they spoke with the victim, who stated they were at Duo's Bar earlier in the morning when they ran into an old friend. An argument ensued and the victim was stabbed in the arm. Information was given on the suspect in the
they were
investigation.
stabbed where?
They
They
said,
earlier in the day, so.
yeah, earlier in the day, I don't,
So somebody, cause this is what I'm saying, this.
no, I'm not,
Oh, no.
but what I'm saying is you're coming up on here again, and I just, you know,
Yeah, I mean, cause they tagging anything, like I said, there was an accident on State Street they called me about. Say, oh, cause they could've, that was in the area, we the closest bar in the area with somebody there, and I'm like, what?
yeah, but these are stating your address, like a man with a gun, somebody called in and said there was a gun, don't
There was
know
no
if there
gun.
was, right. But all I wanna make you
No, I
aware
get
of
that, but I'm saying that's like uncontrollable.
Oh, no, yeah. But I mean, but all of these, they don't, like a lot of these, when we get calls, they listed like 100 block of a certain street, they don't list a specific address. And these ones, you know, address your addresses, so.
No, yeah, but I'm telling you, I literally got a, what day was that, Saturday, at about 11 p.m., they called me saying there was a car accident up the block on State Street. Could the person possibly been in? I said, how could I remotely answer that question?
But no, I just, you know, wanna make you guys aware with summer coming, you know how, you know
Oh, yeah.
how it was
Yeah, I
last
cooperate
summer
with them
for you.
every time. I give them, when they call, we
Oh,
cooperate with them.
I'm not being critical, I just, you know, wanna let you guys know that a lot more of these things are coming up
Okay.
and stuff like that, so.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Alder Peterson.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. You know, this reminds me of something. Thank you for having this bit of a conversation. You know, you as a business owner, you have this, an extra degree of this, in a sense, a community partner. And so not only do you have a higher responsibility because you have a privilege with having a liquor license, but, you know, you become a place in our community that, you know, when you talk about they're calling you for anything, it's because, you know, you're a place, you know, that you're trying to help. Everybody's trying to help become part of the community, solve things that are happening around. So in a sense, it's because you are a business owner. You're a business owner in an area where maybe something has occurred within a certain mile radius. So I hope you look at that and you understand, you know, we're all just trying to, you know, create a sense of a safe community, and you're just part of that. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they're calling you because you're part of a problem. They're calling you because you're part of our community. And so, you know, hopefully you can look at it that way. And how is business going for you?
It's all right.
Yeah. Because we have you before us, and I understand, you know, with the pandemic, it was challenging, and now here we are trying to crawl out of it.
Yeah.
And you've been seeing an increase? Is things going good, or?
Hit or miss.
Yeah.
Real hit or miss.
Is there anything that you feel, you know, now that you're here at the city, that, you would like to see, or some type of
More parking.
information you might
That's
need?
it, just more parking.
What'd you say?
More parking.
Oh, more parking, oh my goodness.
Yeah, other than that, no, I'm good.
You're
There
good.
is no parking.
Okay. Any other questions from any of the committee members? Okay, just before we take a vote here, I do want to point out that this is the second time that you've been called, your bar has been called in for formal expression in 6 months. I'm thinking, I want you to make sure you understand that it could go through due process. If because of you, this is the second time in 6 months, it can kind of get very challenging and referred to the city attorney's office, which is another process that they would work with. I just want to make sure that you understand the serious nature of being called in frequently. Okay. Is that, yes, sir.
Something to ask the city attorney, so what are our options for this particular one? I mean, we did the one a couple months ago. We motioned, so can we make a motion to receive and file this incident? The other incidents would still be on paper for us if something happened?
So just to back up a little bit, the last time this licensee was called in was, on September 25th, 2023. That was resulting from an incident on September 17th. At that time, officers arrived on the scene. They were refused entry. The licensee was cited at that time. I know I spoke with Mr. Lewis. Eventually, that citation went through municipal court. He was defaulted and ultimately found guilty of that. So this recent call-in is within 6 months of that, which means if this committee does not rescind it, it would be referring it to my office automatically. That would mean that I would talk to Mr. Lewis. I would start the process for either suspension or revocation. Usually in cases like this, I would work with the licensee on an agreement, and if we can't come to an agreement, we would go before due process. So the committee could either refer this to the city attorney's office because it is a second call-in within 6 months, or the committee could rescind this formal expression of concern.
Then you refer it back to last September then, correct? What I'm saying, we already got a concern on it.
Yeah.
If we rescind this one, that doesn't rescind the first one, am I correct?
It does not. So rescinding a formal expression of concern doesn't necessarily erase it or take it off the books altogether. It just means that this one particular incident does not cause it to go to due process. However, if something happens within the next 6 months, which would still be 3 within a 1 year period, I could still use this incident against them.
Nothing else at this time, I'd make a motion, rescind this item.
I have a motion to rescind
Formal
This-
expression.
Formal expression of concern
Form-
for this item.
formal expression of concern of this item.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Is there any discussion?
I would just like to say, as we've kind of talked about making sure that we're consistent with our policies and things like that, I fully believe that this is just a clear as to where everything was, in this instance. However, I would just like it to be known on the record, if it does come back again, I do believe that we should kind of move forward with that, but I will agree with the motion, but I just wanted to make that comment.
Although, any other questions?
She's got
Yes.
something.
Sorry, I should clarify. So if this were rescinded, the next one that would cause it to go to due process would have to occur within 6 months of the September.
Right.
If it's outside of that 6 months,
That is true.
so in 1 month, if it occurs in 2 months, he would end up back here before the committee, but it wouldn't automatically trigger due process because that would be within a period longer than 6 months.
Right.
We're good?
I do have a
Yes.
question, actually. Were you aware that that license has to be placed on the wall?
Yeah, I mean, we had it on the wall, we had them on the wall at first, but again, they was either getting broke, something was going on, so that's why we moved to the binder, but, I mean, like I said, it's not a problem to do that.
And when it went to the binder, did you just think that was just a reasonable alternative, or?
I mean, yeah, 'cause they
They-
asked to see it, it didn't be like they came in and said, oh, let's see it on the wall, they just say, let me see the license.
But now you know,
Yep.
according
Yeah,
to
that's
the,
been something
to the
that's been
law.
in play forever.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
Nope.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Good luck, you guys.
All right, y'all have a good day.
Thank you. Our next item we'll take up item 0211-24 and 212-24 together. If we are to call in any establishments from the police report, we will take,
Wait, you missed
Yeah, what about this one?
157.
157-24.
okay, let me look at a different page. Okay. Thank you for catching that, Alder Cole. Item number 015724, communication sponsored by myself on behalf of the city clerk's office, submitting a renewal application for a massage establishment license, Yapin Yang DBA Han Spa, located at 906 State Street, Yam Yang owner, First District. And this is just a
Their
renewal.
renewal, so I
Renewal,
move
so
to approve,
it has to
everything is
be
on
here.
the up and up.
Right, right.
Motion
Second.
to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Back to item number 0211-24, 212-24, which we'll take up together. If we are to call any establishment in based on the police report, we'll take a vote on the establishment to call in for a formal expression, and we will need a separate vote to recommend for approval for a call and items to go to council. The first one is obviously 211-24, communication sponsored by myself on behalf of the city of the Racine Police Department for the license premises report. Officer Tillman, take it away.
Kind of touched on the one already, with the stabbing, Alder Cole brought it up. That was the most significant one. And then obviously the other one that we spoke about, we kind of relayed that in with the other, license issue with, duos. That happened on the 26th. Both of those issues are those are the most major issues that were on. I have heard nothing in follow-up to the stabbing as far as, if they found out if that happened at duos or not.
I have a question, sir, when you're
Yes, sir.
done. Is there anything, can you provide us any information or an update on the double vision complaints?
Yes. So on, 129 of 24, there were a couple of, neighbors to Double Vision that showed up at the meeting, and they were concerned, about some problems that they've had in the area, and saying that, police weren't really doing what, they felt they should be doing. So I looked up all the calls for service, and the calls for service in 2022, March 12th through the end of the year, there were a total of 43 calls, but 26 of those were extra attention calls, which are the officers self-initiate that just by being in the area. So half of those calls for service back then were initiated by officers. And then in 2023, there was a total of 68 total calls for service. 49 of those were extra attention by officers for the entire year of 2023. 7 of those calls were called in by the bar owner or bartender at the time. 6 of them were called in by anonymous callers. They refused to give their names. And then 6 of them were called in by a named party. So, yes, they have a lot of calls for service.
Mhm.
However, taking into account, especially in 2023, you're looking at probably 65%-ish of the calls were initiated by us. And none of those resulted in anything of any significance other than a few large crowds get dispersed once we get them.
You never made it on this report at all.
They're not, and I did also make note of that they were not actually on this report.
I hear it.
Granted, I've only done this for a couple months now, but it is the first time that they haven't been.
Yes.
So,
Come over there.
Okay.
Okay.
So I guess I'd make a motion to, receive and file, or, make a motion to receive and file a report?
I'll second.
Before you guys do that, I had some questions, or for clarification perhaps. The majority of the calls were not made by the people who have expressed concern. Is that true? That's basically what I heard.
from what I can call, yes, that are directly related to the bar.
I mean, so
Now,
the
if they
citi-
call-
the neighbors are not really driving it.
I would say no.
Okay.
Based on this information that I have,
Yeah.
no.
Okay, we have a motion and a
Maybe-
second.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I was gonna get back to that.
Okay, thank you. Just for the record and for clarity, so we can put it out there, because I know that, this topic, has a lot of heart behind it when we bring up that bar. So those calls, I know you broke it down, I was trying to do math in my head, but then I got lost in your story, but, so the ones that were outside calls, that weren't from the police department itself,
Mhm.
there was a number of calls that were from the establishment itself, and then the number from outside callers, and none of those were substantiated? How many of those were substantiated calls? So the numbers that were not from staff and
Mhm.
not from the police department, but that were actually from callers?
You mean,
One of those six, let's say, I'll touch on
Yeah.
the ones that are the refused ones. So these are anonymous callers, they
Yeah.
refuse to give.
Okay.
Loud music call, 4 people playing loud music. At that time, we were still under our call curtailment plan, so they did not respond to that. And then another loud music call. Officers arrived, located the parties, moved them along without any further incident. Civil trouble, complainant called about a male and female yelling at each other. Refused complainant could not give a description of the parties yelling at each other. Officers did arrive in the area, and they didn't locate anybody, and obviously without a description of anybody that, other than if there were 2 people yelling, it would be pretty hard to prove anything. Civil trouble, who's complaining called about people outside the tavern yelling. Officers arrived, not hear any type of disturbance coming from the area. And another loud music call, about loud music coming from vehicles. Officers arrived, they did not locate any vehicles with loud music playing. Reckless driving. Obviously, a person claims that the patron left the establishment in a vehicle, appeared to be intoxicated. Officer checked the area, but they couldn't locate anybody. Then, for the persons who did give a name, a complainant called about loud music. Officers arrived, found the music was not that loud, and did not find anyone drinking in their vehicles, which was also a part of the complaint. However, they did give extra attention when possible for the remainder of the night. Named complainant stated patrons from the tavern very disruptive to the whole neighborhood. Stated patrons break bottles in the roadway. Officers did observe broken bottles in the roadway. Complainant also stated patrons urinated in the yard, have damaged surveillance cameras on his house. The complainant went on to state he has had problems with the owner of the tavern as well. Officer spoke with the bartender, informed the officer they clean up around the tavern to ensure it stays clean. Bartender also stated complainant is also a problem And he claims that they will break bottles themselves
Mhm.
to get the tavern in trouble. Another noise violation, people being loud, hanging out in the street. Arrived, as I stated, they observed some people outside, and as usual, when we arrived in just minutes, everybody starts to disperse. Possibly being loud and fighting. Officers arrived, observed a large amount of people outside the tavern, but nobody was fighting. Again, the officers stayed on scene until they cleared the area. And they called into a fight between themselves and the bartender. Spoke at both halves, reviewed surveillance video inside the bars, found the original complainant was the problem party in the incident, and was cited for disorderly conduct. They were no longer welcomed at the tavern. That one was called in, trying to get the bill, so then they actually were found to be in trouble. And another loud music.
So what I'm hearing the repeat, of course, is the music, which we get a lot of that, you know, from certain taverns that have, any outdoor space, but when I recall the neighbors, or I'm assuming they were all neighbors, come and complain, the complaints really are based off of really violence and motorcycle gangs and motorcycle activity, happening in the neighborhood and those individuals. I'm not hearing any of that in any
I
of
looked,
your.
I mean, if you look up their, Google their address, let's say, Google their bar,
Yeah.
there are pictures on there of biker gang
Or- So
guys
maybe-
hanging outside there,
Yeah.
but I've found nothing in here specifically stating.
So maybe probably just from our end for consumption of this information, they are saying crowds of people. And so, you know, we probably don't want to identify, you know, you're looking for certain things to identify. It's probably safe to say crowds of people could correlate to their stories. Yeah.
What's going on there a lot too is, for 40 years, it was the Max Bar. Nobody went there.
Mhm.
Now there's people going in there. I've gone in there on Friday nights and 20, 30 people, and they get a little loud on the side, and outside, you gotta tell them to just keep it down, but it's just because before they never had a bar crowd, now they got a bar crowd. And they also do a lot of fundraisers with the different motorcycle
Tons.
groups. You know, and so.
Well, and their smoking area is directly to the side and to the front of the
Yeah.
building, whereas a lot of these taverns have it behind the building,
Yeah.
things of that nature. So I think based on where it's located, you know, where that area is located, that's where you're getting some of that noise from the neighbors over there. Which I definitely understand and can see. And again, going back to the Max days, are they in your district or are they, okay, so I think they're either more West or Horton's district. But again, you look at that pattern and what they're doing now, and again, they do a lot of fundraisers. I don't feel it's unsafe. I can understand being in a quiet little neighborhood, it's sometimes being a little bit loud. I don't find that it's loud specifically late at night personally. And again, these seem to be non-violent offenses for the most part, so I just want to make that comment.
There was, the one gentleman that was here that night,
Mhm.
I did read a report that when he stated he was assaulted, he had a small laceration on his lip. He went into the bar.
Instigate.
I don't wanna say unprovoked, but, he went into the bar because people were lighting off fireworks. He didn't like it, so he went into the bar. No need to really go in the bar, he could have called the police. And then he confronted people in there. Physical altercation started, he went to the hospital, officers arrived at the hospital. No stitches, nothing along those lines. And then again, like I said, he didn't want to press it.
Thank your guys what they're doing out there, because they got a lot on their plate.
Mhm.
I think just for the record, just because this is one, you know, we don't want to discredit, you know, I would hate to not feel heard, but I think, Jeff Coe, you hit a valid point that there's just been a shift and a change in a neighborhood. You know, over time, a change, a business has become successful, and it's garnering more patrons, and they're having fundraisers and different events, so, and they're working within their business framework, feeling like, wait a minute, you know, but they are still part of a community. Granted, it's kind of lost a little bit because you're facing a busy street and you're not looking at people's homes or into their windows, but however, there is a backside to it. So, you know, just to be able to, thank you for, that's a lot of work to go through that, thank you, just to create, you know, context matters. And, when you hear about a story about somebody coming over by his house, punching him in the face, that's the story we heard. I didn't recognize or understand that the story actually, what it looked like, it was a little bit different, right? He went inside of establishment, and it does create a different scene. So if they do get called in here, if we do have it, we at least have this context to work from. But, you know, I don't know what violations that, from at least our standpoint at a committee, it seems like they need neighborhood, some type of neighborhood communication or something like that. And they used to have it with Neighborhood Watch. They used to have, conflict resolution, but I think that's
I
gone now.
think that's a good term. Should be neighbors getting, and the owners, you know, bar, neighbors getting together,
Yeah.
working out some of their problems and communicating, I think is a
But I
good word.
don't think for any of our time and within the authority of which we have, it doesn't raise it to a level of concern, at least at my end. I don't think from the police department's end either, and that's what it sounded like coming from the past discussions as well. But at least now we know the context. And if it is loud music, I do have a question. I had just, you know, when they used to have those sound decibel readers, it was only the health department that has that. The police department doesn't have that, correct? No, I really think it's just the health department. So really, when the officers are coming, they're just basing it off of, you know, their subjective nature and, yeah.
Oh,
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Those
I'm sorry.
decibel readers and stuff, the health department has those, so.
Are any of the noise calls after I think there's a limit, like 10 o'clock or something, are they late into the night, the noise calls?
Imagine that most are.
And two.
Around midnight. Some are at 7:15. Midnight. Of, 7 o'clock. No, around the board, I guess.
Okay.
O'clock. Kind of around, some of them are kind of around the same time, like they're watching the clock to see if they're gonna.
Okay. Are there any other, thank you. Are there any other questions, comments? And I believe we had a first by Alder Cole, second by Alder Peterson to receive and file. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Again, I know Officer Tillman pretty much covered it. Does anything stick out for anybody on the committee for formal expression of concern? Seeing none, guess we'll adjourn. We have adjourned. Thanks everyone for their due diligence. Awesome.